Hey guys, it's that time again. It's time for initial assessment. And in this initial assessment video, we're going to be talking about Comics, the magazine, issue number 1. So, reading this brought back a lot of nostalgia for Wizard magazine. The comparisons are uncanny, to be honest. I don't have the first issue of Wizard, but I've had the third issue and the fifth issue. And I think I started originally reading Wizard around issue 11 that had a Jim Lee Wildcats cover on it, way back in 1992. But I see a lot of the same bones here that Wizard magazine had. This time, though, they're getting some comic pros. There's a round table with Scotty Young and Kyle Higgins and Tony Fleecs in here. They're getting John Layman and Rob Guillory to do an offshoot here from Chew with Poyo the Chicken. You're getting an article with Ronda Rousey talking about comics. There's an article here talking about Rick Veitch's finishing up Swamp Thing, his Swamp Thing series, which comes out, I believe, at the end of this month with Swamp Thing 1989, issue 1. So you're getting a lot of insider information. You're getting a lot of hard journalism that you didn't get from sites like Bleeding Cool or comicbookresources.com or what's the other website I usually go to, newsarama.com. So you're getting different stories than what you would be getting on those websites. And I've collected magazines for years on and off. When I was a kid, I was collecting, well, not a kid, but in my 20s, I collected a lot of PlayStation magazines when the PS3 was a big thing. I collected PSM, the official US PlayStation magazine, those sort of things. And print media seemed to be dying off. Not because I wanted it to, but just because everything seemed to be moving to the internet. So you get a lot of articles in here that, like I said, it's hard form journalism. And that's a good thing, because that means that it's long form. You actually ask the hard questions of the people that you want to talk to, rather than just toss them softball after softball, and it's the same information that we get regurgitated from one website to another website, to the third website, to the 17th website. Instead, you get to see Scott Snyder and Nick Dragotta, Katie Kubert, and a bunch of others that were building up the Absolute Universe as it was an idea, before it was absolutely, no pun intended, concrete. And you had Absolute Batman #1 in your hand. You had Absolute Wonder Woman in your hand. You had Absolute Superman in your hand. Before all of that, this gives you an idea of how that brain trust and that brainchild turned into something physical. And that's what I always used to love about Wizard magazine, is that you would get those in-depth articles that show you how to make Absolute Batman. And it would have been titled a little bit differently. It would have been like Building the Batman, how to craft a Batman for the present day, something like that. But it says the interview was conducted by Joseph Keating, and this interview has been edited for length and clarity. So they talk about the beginnings of Absolute Batman, creation, the revolution, and then it says the future. And so they're even talking about DC Next Level. They're talking about what's coming up. So that gets you excited about what is coming up with DC Comics, what's coming up with Marvel. And then kind of as a secondary, you get how to make Absolute Catwoman. And then it says, how did we get here? A brief history of fanzines. So they go all the way back from the 1960s through, the 2010s and present day. They start with Alter Ego, which was Roy Thomas's magazine. Then they talk about the Comic Buyer's Guide, from 1971 to 2013. They talk about Wizard magazine, of course, that ran from 1991 to 2011. Hero Illustrated, which I didn't know it was such a short run on Hero Illustrated. It only ran for 26 issues. Tomorrow's, which was started by the Tomorrow's Company, which has done a lot of books. They did Komoda, talking about Miracle Man years ago. They did the Jack Kirby Collector, comic book artist, alter ego, draw. They did Right Now, which I've got the entire 20-issue run of Right Now, which started by Danny Fingeroth. Then you had, let's see, Panel by Panel, and that was 2017 to 2023. Let's see, what else? Jimrug.com. Then you get Andy McDonald here showing you about different pouches and how to draw different pouches based on the character. And then, you know, hey, these guys have lost their pouches. Which pouch goes with which character? That's almost like the Brutes and Babes or Nuts and Bolts articles that used to be in Wizard back in the day. It would kind of take you inside the comics industry. Then you get the picks. And their top pick was Tigress Island, which just came out this week. They talk about that book. They also talk about, what else? Feral, Amazing Spider-Man, Exploit from Mad Cave, talking about the new Lobo that's coming out from Scotty Young. That Graham Crackers Comics is still a thing, apparently. And you get these, you know, what's happening in the next issue. You get some ads and articles back here, people trying to buy your books. It's called, you know, the classifieds, of course. So you kind of finish off with the thing that used to finish off the Wizard magazine, and it's a price guide. This is based on shortbox.com. So I think it started off really, really, really strong. And hey guys, for $2.99, I saw a couple of other people that said that their shop was selling it for about $1, but Wizard is not ever going to come back. I'd love to see it come back just as much as the rest of you, you know, minus Frank Miller. I don't think Frank liked Wizard. But a lot of you would like to see that magazine come back. Now, if they can make a go of this after the first 3 or 4 issues, it would be scary to see it happen. But if they could go from the way that this is bound right here, and they could go to a perfect bound magazine format, just like Wizard was, it'll be a much more desirable book in 10 or 15 years. This is literally a floppy, just like a comic book. But Perfect Bound, the Wizard magazines, that's why they've survived for so long out in the wild, is because you could take a Wizard and it had that thick cover like a book, and you could stack them on top of each other and they wouldn't fold in. You could fold them, you know, and carry them in your back pocket. Maybe not towards the, you know, once it got going into issue 35 and 40, that magazine was pretty thick for a back pocket. But you get my point. It was meant to be preserved. It was created by people who loved the industry, and it was also created to be sustainable. Not only to be sustainable sales-wise, but to be sustainable that I can go to a yard sale with some comic stuff, and a lot of times I'll find at least 1 or 2 issues of Wizard scattered in there, and if it's something that I want and they want less than $5 per a copy, then hey, I'm game. Wizard was a big part of me growing up and reading comics, learning about the journalism of comics, for better and for worse. But I really like that magazine, and I really like this one. So if you got a chance to pick that up from your local shop, let me know in the comments below what you thought of Comics the Magazine, issue number 1. And do you see a future for this magazine? Because I certainly think it's extremely bright future. Thanks for watching, guys. This was Initial Assessment, and I'll catch you in the next video.